Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our interview and elevator pitch workshop. Today, we are going to spend the time and talk about how you could prepare yourself to present your best to recruiters and make an impression that will fit you with the opportunities that they would offer. And before we go right into the content, I would like to take time and thank Joey Wu, our professional development director, for helping me put these slides together and make this event happen. So that being said, let's today we're gonna talk about things that you could do to ensure that your interview is a success at three different stages. That is before the interview, during the interview, and after the interview. Always before you go into an interview, you should always research the company that you're doing the interview with. That includes the company itself, some information about it, like obviously its name, where its headquarters is based in, what kind of business it has, which also brings up the fact that you should also do some specific homework about the product or the line of work that you're interviewing with. Because some companies say, what is Towers Watson? They have several different lines of business. They have consulting in retirement, health and benefit, as well as P&C. And there are even larger insurance companies that nowadays cover many different product lines. And you should do your homework on that as well. You should also know well about the opportunity that you're interviewing for, whether you are looking for a internship opportunity, or are you looking for full-time jobs, and when and where are those starting? You should get to know that. And even better, if you are able to acquire the information about who you're going to be interviewing with, you could also do some homework about the recruiter that you could be talking to. And you can do that by visiting their LinkedIn profile. You can visit the company website. That's like the official source of information. But sometimes things you can get from the company websites are a little bit too generalized, let's just say. The company website oftentimes contain a about us section. It will say things about the company's what the industries they're in, the company work culture, things like that. But those information are sometimes very generalized. And one of the good ways you can get some more specifics is through the info sessions that some recruiter will do. And we do have many of them lined up in the upcoming a couple of weeks. In the info sessions, company could share more in-depth information about, say, the particular line of work, what are some of the works that they do on a daily basis, what are the opportunities that they're offering exactly this year. So that's a good that's a good opportunity for you to learn about the companies that you're signing up with. And even better, if you're able to, you can try to learn more about the companies through some connections. And by that, I mean network connections. Say, if you know someone that have worked or interned at this company, you could talk to them, and they could share with you some insights about, say, what does their interview process look like, and what are some of the work that they are working on these days. I mean, they're most likely not going to share with you confidential information, but they could share something like the product developments they're trying to do. Maybe they're trying to expand their business, or are they trying to implement some more innovative pricing methods. Things like this could help you showcase that you're really interested in the company and you've done your homework, and it could also help you think of some unique questions or topics that you can talk about with the recruiter at your interview. Aside from doing homework on the company, another important thing that you should work on is on yourself. To be more specific, to review your own resume. This is something that is often overlooked by, let's just say, by us when we are preparing ourselves to go into an interview. We're oftentimes much more concerned with getting to know the company well, so we know who we're dealing with. But on the other hand, we sometimes forget that we need to be thoroughly familiarized with ourselves as well, especially the information that we presented in the resumes that we sent to them earlier on. It is very important that you familiarize yourself with all the items that you put it onto your resume. This might sound weird because obviously you worked on the resume yourself, but say for me, it's gonna be tough for me to just on the spot without any homework done to recall the details about this case study that I did in the first year of my college, which I still have on my resume, by the way. It is those kind of details that definitely worth your time to do a review. You should look at the work and project experiences more specifically, and that means sometimes you need to go back and spend time to do the homework, even to the extent of going to the project files, especially the presentations that you've had. And I do hope that you keep those. It is a good habit to keep record of those. Say if I were to do, if I were to review my own resume, I would probably have to dig into the case study files and try to look for the report, the final report that we wrote, the presentation slides that we made. Those presentable items sometimes makes the most efficient review material, because those were the things that when you were doing the project or the work that you ended up deciding those are the most presentable highlights of that experience. So going through that is very helpful for you to recollect the details of that part of your experience. So if a recruiter should bring that up and ask you to share more about that particular experience, you would have a better idea and you would know what you would like to showcase to them. You should use these items on your resume. You should know which ones are the highlights, which ones are the lowlights. I say highlights and lowlights because you probably know that a common question that is oftentimes asked during interviews is that what are some of your the experiences you're most proud of, or some of the experience that you there were questions like they could ask you about what is your weakness, or what were some things that you wish you could have done better in a project, things like that. When those questions come up, if you know your experiences well enough, you would be able to utilize this experience as your asset to help you answer these questions. Doing this kind of a review before the interviews helps you refresh the memory, and it helps you to also show that you're dedicated to your work and you know what you've been doing. Sorry, am I hearing a question? Never mind. Let's continue then. Right. So that brings us to what should we do during the interview? One of the very important thing is, although these days a lot of the interviews is probably going to take place online, it's going to take place in a virtual format. And as for this year, since we're moving out of the pandemic, some of the interviews, or at least some rounds of it, might take place in person this year. But either way, that is, you should always make sure to be up to par with your appearance and your business etiquette. Some of the things you should do, let's start with the virtual format, which is most likely at least the first round interviews are going to be in. You should always make sure you are you have your business formal appearance up. Like, these interviews are serious professional events, and you should always make sure to be prepared to in the business formal etiquette. And I guess there's always this saying is always true, that it's much better to overdress than underdress. So I would just say don't take any chances, even if it's a first round interview or even on campus interview that are that is very preliminary. It's the recruiter is probably gonna sometimes they will say things like, this is just a quick chat, things like that. But don't let your guard down. Always be prepared in your nice suit per se, be business formal, and be of appropriate etiquette. And open up your camera. That is like I feel like it's very intuitive, but it always worth stressing. Um, you probably don't want to count on getting away with not having your camera open during an interview, because at the end of the day, the interview is a conversation that helps you and the recruiter know better about each other. And just imagine if you're talking to someone, there's either an image or even worse, just a name on there. It's not going to feel like a conversation that's going to leave you that's going to leave a very good impression. So always have your camera open and be prepared for that. I know sometimes technical difficulties can arise, and that could be very annoying. So that's also something you would like to make sure that you test out before the interview takes place. You probably want to find a environment that is clean, that is quiet, and is hopefully more professional per se. I guess there's no clear definition of what a professional environment for a virtual event would be. Because nowadays, let's just say, see, you guys are looking at me and I have this virtual background up. This could be a helpful way to make it easier for you to select your environment. You just need to make sure that it's a quiet environment, you have some privacy, and you will feel comfortable talking in this place. That should be good. Right now, if I pull off my virtual background, you could probably see the kind of mess that I have in my living room / kitchen. So the virtual background could help. But again, it's one of these tech things that you probably want to make sure to spend time making sure it's set up correctly before the interview. It's always important that you keep these details in check to make sure you're presenting yourself in a very professional manner. And this will help you make a positive and memorable impression to the recruiters. And then to start off the interview, there's something that we call the elevator pitch. You probably heard this term, probably not. This is this is a term used in the business world. It refers to the kind of quick conversation that would take place, at least back in the days. Imagine in a scenario where you take an elevator with some coworkers or some fellow business people, and you want to make a conversation to them to either introduce yourself or introduce some things or products that you're doing. So this kind of elevator pitch, this 1 minute or even less quick conversation would take place. Actually, rather than a conversation, it's almost more like a 1 minute quick intro. This is some skill you want to practice up before you go into an interview, because this could be a very helpful thing for you to start off the interview, especially when the recruiter asks you to introduce yourself. This is much more often it's the case back in the in-person interview days, because a lot of the times the recruiter will ask you to quickly introduce yourself while they spend like a minute to quickly look through your resume, whether for the first time or just for another time, to come up with some questions they want to ask, things like that. So they will ask you this, and it would be your best if you have your elevator pitch prepared. So what do you do usually for an elevator pitch? That is, usually it will include starting off your name to introduce yourself, and you can talk about your academic achievement so far, and some extra curriculums and leadership experiences that you have, and then your career progress as far as actuaries. That could include the exams that you've did, some like kind of projects you did maybe, but be very brief about projects. That is not the place for you to like go in detail and talk on your project for like 2-3 minutes. That's definitely not the case. And you can talk about maybe, I've did a couple case studies, or maybe I've interned this past summer, that kind of thing. And then you can wrap up your quick intro session with your career interests and career goals. Just make sure that matches the interview that you're doing. And to help you prepare that, this is something you can actually draft before the interview. Later on, I would talk about personal experience that like I usually advise against drafting almost like template answers to sorts of interview questions. But this elevator pitch is something that I would say you do wish to make a draft, and then actually you practice. You maybe in front of a mirror, maybe in front of a camera, you just try to do this, pretend this is in an interview, and you make these practices again and again until you're so like well practiced with it that it's almost become an instinct for you to make sure that you say everything you want to say, present yourself confidently. And actually, let me do a quick demonstration. Say if I were to do an elevator pitch right now. So, hi, my name is Huayu Zhang, but please call me Ivo. I'm a fourth-year student at UC Santa Barbara, pursuing a master's degree in actuarial science. I'm expecting to graduate in December 2022. I've been a loyal member and officer of the UCSB Actuarial Association since my first year at UCSB, and this year I'm serving my community as the president of the association. So far, I've passed 2 actuarial exams, and I'm working towards my 3rd, expecting to take exam IFM in the upcoming March. And I interned at Nationwide this past summer, and right now I'm actively looking for internship opportunities for the upcoming summer 2022. See, like that's how I would probably do a intro elevator pitch if I were to say sit down with a recruiter. And you would like to make sure that you prepare for this beforehand, so you could confidently introduce yourself to the recruiter, whether they ask you to do so, or I guess depending on the cases, you could also start things off like more voluntarily. It kind of depends on the general flow of the interview. But either way, this will help you make a great first impression. It will start off the interview the right way with a solid flow. Like that's very helpful in almost any conversation in general. Like if you start it off right, it's much likely to go well for the rest part of it. And yeah, then we are going into after the interview. Probably noticed that I haven't talked too much about the rest of the things that is going to take place during the interview. And trust me, we're going to come back to that in just a bit. But now let's just quickly talk about like there are still things that you should do after the interview to help make this interview experience overall a success. And this is oftentimes like this is much easier to be overlooked than the other 2 portions, because it's easy to feel like as soon as you walk out the interview room or like you exit the Zoom session, you feel like, oh, okay, so this is an interview that I just did. I'm over this now. It's not necessarily the case. So one of the things you should always do after an interview is you should express your gratitude to the recruiter that spent time to talk to you. I don't mean by the that in the very end you say thank you so much for your time, like verbally. That's not what I meant. It's that after the interview, you should write a thank you note to the representative that they've just met, you talked with. Most of the time in the form of email. If you happen to have their LinkedIn connection, if you're connected to them on LinkedIn, I guess you could also do that. The format is not there's not a unique format, correct format to do this, but oftentimes email is the easiest. You should write a thank you note somewhere in the line of, it could be really simple, just a quick note of, hi, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed talking to you about, you can name a couple of topics if there were memorable topics that you went over, and things like, I hope to hear back from you soon. Just a quick courtesy note like that. It might not feel like a lot to send their way. You sometimes you probably wonder whether they pay attention and to read it at all. But trust me when I say this is a good way to show that you have a good manner, and also on the other hand, make yourself more memorable. Because on the recruiter's perspective, they probably interview many candidates in a day, and if you if you have the compassion to do this, this will make you more remarkable in their mind. And even better, on top of a thank you note, like I said, if you could try to create a ongoing connection with them, that's even better. You could do that by say, if you take down their name, you can try to look them up on LinkedIn. That's probably the best platform to try to connect with recruiters. This way you can keep track of who you've interviewed with, and going forward, in the future, if you were to interview at the same company again, you might recognize some familiar names, and you can bring it up like, oh, we've had conversation last year, or things like that. And like I said, this is, you can combine this with the thank you note. You can you can use the thank you note as a way to connect to them. Like I said, on LinkedIn, this is a good way to show a genuine interest in not only the particular opportunity, but say in the company or the team that you're trying to get an opportunity from. And this kind of ongoing connection, I don't like to say that this is like some promising way to score you a future opportunity, but on the other hand, you never know. Like, for all the network connections you have, maybe at some point of time they will recall this outstanding candidate that happen to match up with one of the opportunities that they have in their hand. So it would be a good thing for you to keep in touch with these connections, with any connections, in fact, in the actuarial realm that you make. So that's also something to think about. And yeah, some other tips that I would like to mention. These are more or less tips based off more of a personal experience. So starting off, there's all these other tips that I've been talking about, it was more or less geared towards the more traditional sense of interview, whereas you would sit down with one or multiple recruiters, either in person or through Zoom, but either way, you're having a live conversation with someone. But these years, there's this new interview format that is, I can kind of tell is becoming a little bit more popular these years. That is interview through recorded footages. I know Willis Towers Watson did this last year, and they probably still do for their first round screening. So it will utilize some kind of online platform. They will send you a link for you to sign in, and it will have several different questions or say prompts that they will give you a certain time to prepare, and then it will use your device to record a footage of you responding to that question. Now, I personally, I'll be honest, personally, I hated this format so much because I'm not sure how much experience of being in front of a camera you guys have, like in front of a camera being recorded, like not like on Zoom, like being recorded by a camera. I've had experience with that, and it's very, very different from having a conversation or even making a presentation. Being in front of a camera has this thing of, at least for me, and I do hear many people sharing similar feeling, that it has a thing to make you extra nervous. And it also has this thing of like making you feel much more concerned about perfection of your performance in front of the camera. So bottom line is, I don't personally appreciate this format, but nowadays, like I said, this is becoming more popular. This is a very real thing out there. So probably want to keep in mind that you don't want to be caught off guard that this is a thing. And the recorded interviews I've experienced so far, luckily, I've had 2 occasions of this. None of them were timed. One of them was like the responses are timed, but you have unlimited attempts that you can, if you record one, you can look it back. If you don't like it, you can record another one until you're finally satisfied. And I ended up sitting in front of the computer the entire morning, responding through that. I think it was 5 or 6 of those questions. And the other one that I had, I don't have unlimited attempts, but I had a limited amount of time to prepare before I hit the record button. So so either way, I guess it gave me some more room to pursue the perfection that I wanted. But let's just say I personally don't see that as effective as, you know, sitting down with a real person and have a conversation with. So that is something. Another type of interview that probably worth highlighting is the case study type of interview. So this is actually quite a generalized category. It could include many different formats. Say for Root, I was interviewing with Root last year, and as a first round, it is not in fact an interview, it is in fact a case study that they gave me. That is actually almost not an interview technically already. They gave me this case, they gave me technically unlimited, but they did mention recommended time is a week to work on it. And then I submitted my work back. And in one of the other the later rounds of the interview, the technical round, we actually talked about the project. And that is something that some companies also do these days. If it is a live interview, they could present you with a question, a scenario, and a objective for you to solve, especially for consulting firms. I feel like pretty much all of the consulting firms I've interviewed with these days have more or less this kind of case study type interview, or at least case study type question. What the recruiters are looking for in these kind of interviews or questions is they like to see your analytical mindset in motion, especially being provided a prompt without too much prior preparation. This prompt could be something closely tied to the type of work that the position you're seeking is related to, or it could be something almost completely random. I remember when I was interviewed by Aon, they asked me something about what if a client asked me to advise them on pizza sales or golf games, or it could as well be kind of these kind of, you know, very everyday life, very average topic that doesn't seem too technical as well at all, but they would ask you to somehow analyze a certain aspect of it, and they'd like to see how you break the problem down into say, okay, where am I going to get the data? What kind of data would I want to get? And how do I analyze the data to help answer the question? So they're looking to see your thinking process. My advice to these kind of questions is that don't worry too much about the details. Like, as strange as that might sound, details are not their top concern, not the top concern of the recruiters that they're looking to see out of you. They like to see your thought process. Like, that's the key there. So don't focus too much on scrutinizing the details. I would say it's even fine if you're not like perfectly familiar with the topic. Like, say for myself, I hardly played any golf in my entire life ever, but if I were to be presented by such a question, I'll just probably start breaking it down into things like, okay, if I'm to analyze how likely are they to hit the ball in the hole, like which is one strike, I'll probably want to survey things like their years of experience played. Do they have training about it? Do they have like certain amount of training experience, or the type of gear that they're using? I would go into the data analytic mindset and demonstrate. So that's how I would approach a problem, even if I'm not familiar with it. But that being said, again, that brings us back to company research. If you know that you're interning for a consulting firm that does, say, retirement and pension consulting, it's probably the best that you could get to yourself familiarized with some of the technical terms and approaches. That kind of preparation may help you address these kind of questions even better. So there's about that. And for rounds of interviews, so there are usually several rounds of the interview. There are also cases where they only interview you once. Like say for me last year, I got this opportunity from Nationwide, and they only interviewed me like once, and it feels like a first round interview, 10-minute brief conversation, but that was it. Like right after that, given it a couple weeks, they sent me the offer letter. So that's kind of atypical, but generally there are several different rounds of interview. There's the first round, sometimes take place on campus, but unfortunately not this year. The first round interview is more geared towards learning about you in live conversation. The conversation, a lot of the conversation will be about the resume, probably the things they put on there. They'll probably ask for more details. And some companies set up a second round being used as a technical round. This could include the case study kind of question that I just talked about. This could also include some more technical questions about, say, insurance terminologies in their field of work, or sometimes statistical terms, but not usually too complicated and too in-depth. When they ask about statistical knowledge, what they're more oftentimes interested in is how you would utilize this stats concept, or how you would explain this statistics concept to someone that doesn't have a math or stats background. So that's sometimes more of their interest. And then there's probably a final round that being almost a mix of these two. I gotta be honest, I haven't participated in any like traditional sense of final round interview. I got offered a few, but say for different reasons, I either ended up turning them down or just didn't go. So I guess I'm afraid I don't have too much detail to share about the final rounds. That sometimes actually takes place on site. At least back in the days, it used to. That's an opportunity not only for you to be interviewed, but for you to actually visit their work environment, for you to almost, I know for Towers Watson, they used to have almost like a day trip at their office kind of thing, and to observe you in the business setting. That includes not only the interview rounds you're going to have on that day, but also say how you take the opportunity to network with fellow interns, or network with fellow workers on the team, things like that. So that would be a much more, say, complex round on its own. And if you're interested in learning more about that, you could seek out some people who've had that. So they will probably be able to provide more insight on that. And that experience oftentimes, like I said, is based on it's company specific. Like each company probably has its own way to do the final round interview. So that's something you could also pay attention to when you're trying to do research on a company about the interview. And lastly, I just want to again emphasize to familiarize yourself with your own experience, so much so that you make your experience into your asset that you can use to help you and respond to the interview questions. Now, this brings up the interview questions, which you would probably notice I didn't spend too much time talking about today. We used to share these kind of materials during this workshop about lists of typical interview questions that are oftentimes asked. There are many versions of these kind of lists online all over the place. Some are more general for all sorts of interviews. Some are more specific about even particular industries. But honestly, based on my experience, I used to try to prepare for an interview using this sort of list. And like I said, I even had almost like draft answers or answer templates in place, like ready in front of me during an interview. Oh, that was a virtual interview, by the way. So I get to have the window open, even like have that in front of me. And let's just say I failed that particular interview pretty hard. Like it's important to keep in mind that these kind of live interviews, at the end of the day, there are conversations. They have a flow that goes along with how you respond to the questions and what you and the recruiter talk about. It's a two-way conversation. It's not just about to answer the question in a definitive way that you prepared. It oftentimes have to do with what you've already talked about, what you wish to demonstrate but haven't yet talked about. So you're going to be really flexible with how you deal with the situation, instead of thinking that doing enough hard work and preparing for one thing will like just be sufficient to make through this. So instead of focusing too much on list of questions or the types of questions or even particular questions that you could have you could be asked about, I don't feel like that's the best approach, because at the end of the day, there's like infinite number of them out there. Instead, focus on digging through your own experience, like taking it apart and see which parts are the things that you're really proud about, that being asked or not, you almost want to make sure that you demonstrate this either way. And what are some of the things that you feel like you have nowadays, you see you have a room of improvement, some of the things that challenged you, some of the things that say that you're not happy about and you wish you could do better in the future. See, when you go into your experience and evaluate your past experience in this way, it already helps you deal with the majority of types of questions that could come your way. Like I said, most typical questions are asked. They could ask you to talk about things you're proud of. They could ask you to talk about things that you know you can improve on yourself. If you prepare yourself well enough with your own experiences, they could be your asset to answering these questions. And trust me when I say, when you're able to tie your own experience to these questions and show that you are capable of evaluating yourself and improve yourself in the process, that would be something that's really impressive in front of the recruiters. So that's probably the approach you would want to take when it comes to preparing towards the interview, at least content-wise, that is. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up today's workshop. So just a couple quick announcement. Just a quick reminder that this Sunday will be the final deadline to submit your resume to our resume booklet. And yeah, if you haven't done so already, and you would like your resume to be forwarded to all the participating employers this year for the career fair, please make sure to submit your resume before the deadline. And also, if you are a visiting member, welcome. And here are some information that you can join our association and enjoy various member benefits, including the membership book, the resume booklet, including some exclusive opportunities to sit down with professors, talk about resume, or just mentorship program, interesting things like that. So we look forward to having you as member of ours. So that being said, that's the end of our interview workshop today. Thank you all so much for coming, and have a good day.